Hello everyone, and welcome to this video which is going to detail how to survive a week in med school. If you're anything like me, when you started med school, you were overwhelmed with the amount of resources and tools available, and while, yes, they're helpful tools, you lacked an understanding of how to use them all together. The objective of this video is to teach you how to download these tools and how to utilize/access them, to show an example of how to use these tools in a week, and to talk generally about some tips and tricks. So before we get started, a quick preface. Being a med student is challenging. Just remember, you deserve to be here. It's not a mistake that you're here. You worked very hard, and you will succeed in medical school. The only thing preventing you from succeeding and becoming a doctor is yourself. As long as you keep wanting to do that, you will be a doctor. Additionally, this video is not intended as a one-size-fits-all. I have the biases of using Anki and Boards and Beyond, so I'll show an example of my workflow. However, what works for you might be different. Additionally, don't be afraid to change things up. You may feel like you have to stick and commit to a resource, but use the first few weeks of Block 1 to experiment and change and see what you like and what you don't. By around week 3, commit to a study strategy and push forward until the end of the block. You will be okay, and even if you have to remediate, you're still going to be a med student, you're still going to be a doctor. In the description below are some video sections, timestamps, and some links. If you look specifically at the links, you'll find a resource document that has a slew of resources from practice questions to things that are helpful for making PBL presentations to helpful resources for anatomy, etc. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. So let's start by talking about what you'll hear a lot about in medical school, which is something called Anki. Anki is an application or software, depending on whether or not you use it on a computer or a cellular device, that's meant to essentially have flashcards. These flashcards are given to you at certain intervals that are meant to best optimize your learning. Now, you may be wondering, why do I have to make all these flashcards? It sounds time consuming. And luckily, someone has made a wide variety of flashcards that apply to the medical school learning process, and so a lot of the heavy lifting is already done for you. Next, we'll talk about B&B or Boards and Beyond. This is a very commonly used learning platform that has videos of very high yield, which high yield just means things that lead to a lot of questions on your exams, topics, and good explanations behind them. And then lastly, you're going to hear a lot about first aid. First aid is a textbook that is used to lay out a lot of other high yield topics. It's best used in conjunction with Boards and Beyond and other different things, and is a good starting place to learn about a topic. There are other resources available to you as a medical student. However, through our experiences and talking to other students, these are the most ubiquitously used options for students. So if you happen to like a different thing, that's great. But this is just a good example and use case as to how to use a general tool which you can apply to other things. All right, so let's start by getting Anki downloaded. Open a browser and search Anki. It'll be apps.ankiweb.net, and you'll hit the download button. It should automatically pop down here and have instructions for your platform of choice. For downloading in iOS or Android, you'll simply search for it in the App Store and get it installed that way. Note, while the Mac and Windows applications are free for use, the actual applications for Android and iOS are paid. Keep that in mind. I think it's $39 or $29, so I have it installed because I like to walk on the treadmill while I study. So you'll click download Anki for your respective device. In my instance, I have Windows, so I'll click this button. And then once it's done downloading, you click the .exe file. You can leave everything default and hit install. Once it's completed, hit close. Now you should be able to search for Anki on your search bar and click the application. For the first time you click Anki, it'll ask you what language. Just hit OK. And this is what Anki looks like the first time you use it. Now, something to note is you can have Anki synced to different devices. I would strongly recommend you do this. So let me show you now how to set up a sync. Start by clicking the sync button on the top right. It'll tell you that an account is required. You can either log in if you already have an Anki web account, or you can sign up for one by clicking the sign up hyperlink. Here, follow the prompts to make a new account and then sign in on Anki. Once you've entered in your information, hit OK, and you're signed in. You'll notice that from the start you don't have any decks and you don't have any cards, and that's because you don't have any downloaded yet. To get a deck, you're going to want to go to Google and search Anki deck download. The reason you want to search it is because there is sort of a running list that gets updated of this deck, and so we don't want to keep a permanent link to it because that link might change. Now you have a couple different versions of Anki's deck that you can install. You can use the just general V11 deck, which is the version I have installed. However, it's not technically the most up-to-date version. The other option you have is to use the Anki Hub version. And Anki Hub is essentially like Google Docs, but with Anki decks. And so you basically will get all of the updates as they come, and you don't have to worry about downloading any edits or changes. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to go ahead and just stick with downloading the regular deck. But we might have some resources depending on whether or not I have students helping who are more experienced showing how to use Anki Hub. So when you click on this Reddit post, you'll see it's by Anki Med, which is a very, very famous user who's really helpful for making decks on Anki. And what you can do is you go down to the comments and you'll see one here that has some links. You'll go to the Google Drive link, you'll click it. And the reason you want to go to the Google Drive link here is because it has the media. The media is basically like pictures from your textbook and pictures from Boards and Beyond that helps explain the concepts. The regular link up here does not have that media installed. So click a link in the comments, typically the top comment here, and it will give you options for the media. And then hit download. Download anyways. And this will take quite a while. Once it's done downloading, you can simply click on the file that should say APKG. It's like Anki package is what it stands for in my brain. And once you click it, it automatically opens up in Anki. And it'll take a while, but it's going to start loading all the notes. There's more than 30,000 Anki cards that are included in this deck. And each of those cards are relevant and linked to pages in your textbook, videos in Boards and Beyond, and different sections of a million different resources. So let's say you read a chapter in your book, your textbook called First Aid, and you want to study some flashcards about what you just read. You can use Anki, and you can actually search up that chapter within Anki, click on it, and turn on those cards. Those cards will then be available to study, and that way it saves you the hassle of, number one, making cards yourself, and number two, searching and finding the cards that are relevant. Once done, you'll see it says notes added from file and around 30,000 of them. And that's just because there's over 30,000 cards in this deck. And I know that sounds like a scary number, but keep in mind this is going to be through your first 2 years of medical school for about half of them. And then there's cards in here for step 2, which is going to be afterwards. So it's actually spread out over 4 years. So don't freak out. You will be fine. You'll be able to do the cards that you need to do if this is what you choose to use as a resource. Go ahead and hit close. And now you can see that you have a deck. So I typically speaking don't like to keep the whole deck expanded. I just hit the minus button. And we'll talk about some settings and options that we can change to help you out here now. Once you have Anki opened, we can look at some different tools that we have here. So if you hit Tools and Preferences, what you can see here is you've got these tabs for editing your settings. In this video, I'm not going to detail a lot of what quote-unquote the best preferences and settings are. There's lots of videos that do a great job doing that. If you look at the link in the description, I'll link to a specific tutorial that has great resources for some good settings and some add-ons as well too. The biggest one I would take a look at is just knowing whether or not you want to see your cards that are brand new or if you want to see the cards that are reviews, so you've seen them before first. I like to do my reviews first, so show new cards after reviews, because I like to make sure I'm reviewing the material that I've already learned before tackling something new, rather than tackling something new first. However, this is just a personal preference. And then you'll also have some settings for each specific deck. So if I wanted to have like a million decks here, I could have different subsettings. One of the important changes you make is going to be to hit this little gear and hit options, and make sure that you set your limits accordingly. So some people like to do hundreds of new cards every day. I don't think that's always sustainable. Some people like to do 50 new cards each day. So what this will do is this will limit the amount of new content you'll be getting each day. A lot of people set this to 100. Some people set it to like 150. And for maximum reviews, I would go ahead and I would just max this out so that you're reviewing as many cards as you can, because you don't want to get behind on your reviews. It'll really pile up. Okay, so you can see I've got 150 new cards. So that's just the basic settings for getting it set up. And once again, if you click the link in the video description, that it links to an Anki video, it'll give you some better in-depth settings. It'll do a better job explaining it than I will. But I wanted to quickly show you what it looks like if you hit browse. What you can see here is on the left there is decks listed. And so Anking is the deck that we just installed. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see tags. Now, what tags are like labels that allow you to find and sort different cards. So you can see here I have a card clicked, and it has a couple different tags on it. That allows us to search it, and you'll see what that'll look like shortly. I don't want to get into tags at this moment because I'll show you how we use those with a workflow, but for now, just know that they're here, okay? All right, and when you're in Anki, you can click a deck. It'll have some things that pop up, and you can hit spacebar or enter, and it'll show you a card. And then, so I'm reading this in umbilical artery Doppler. Flow should not stop and should always be, I don't know the answer to this one, but forward. Okay, so if I knew that, then I could say, okay, that was easy if I don't want to see that card for 4 days. If I knew it, but maybe I want to review it more, I could hit good, which would make it take 10 minutes before I see it again. If it was hard, I'd say hard, and if I just straight up didn't know it, I'd hit again. And you don't have to manually click these. You can also hit 1, 2, 3, 4 on a keyboard. And so if I wanted to say that was a card I knew and it's good, then I would hit 3, or I could click good at the bottom. Really quick, here at the bottom of my screen, you can see there is a blue number here that stands for the number of cards that are brand new for today. 1 is the number of cards that I'm learning. So these are cards that I've reviewed, but I haven't yet memorized. And Anki does a magic algorithm to tell you whether or not it thinks you've memorized it or not. And then the green number is reviews. So these are cards I've previously learned, but I haven't yet seen today. And Anki is good because it schedules for you when you should review content, and it best optimizes your learning. And when you're done, what I like to do is hit decks. And then I like to make sure I sync it, because that way I can just make sure everything's being kept up to date, my progress is being tracked. Another quick thing I wanted to mention is that by default, all of the cards are turned on. And you might ask, okay, what does it mean a card is turned on? Is it a machine? No. Essentially, you can have cards be suspended or turned off, and you won't see them. And that's important to do because you don't want to be studying Anki cards for a block 5 problem when you're still learning block 1 material. So really quickly, we're going to turn off all those cards. So you'll go back to that browse menu, and you'll scroll down to the deck that says Anking, and you're going to click over here on the card menu. You're going to hit Control A, and it'll take a second. And what that does is that selects every card. If you're on a Mac, you'll hit Command A, but on Windows, you hit Control A. Then you're either going to hit Command or Control J. And what this will do is turn all of those cards yellow. When a card is yellow, it means it is suspended. So now, if I go back to my deck, you can see I have no cards available. It says I'm done for the day because I have no cards turned on. This is what you want to do at the beginning of medical school, and then slowly and surely you'll start turning on Anki cards that you want to start studying and reviewing. So that's a very basic wrap up into Anki, and we'll circle back into how this fits into play with everything else once we go through the workflow. All right, next I want to talk about Boards and Beyond and First Aid. I'm going to briefly introduce you as to what these things are, and then we'll wrap up this video by showing you how to use Anki, Boards and Beyond, and First Aid all together. So we'll start with Boards and Beyond. So you can see I've logged into their website. It's a little bit expensive, but a lot of people end up sharing it. So they'll use one login and they'll just have people split the cost. And that's what I've done with 2 other students. And it's a pretty great resource. Not all of the videos that they have are helpful, but essentially what you can think of this is like a Khan Academy, but specifically for medical students. So you can see now I'm doing step 1 preclinical years. So I'm studying for my step 1 exam, and there's lots of different categories on here. There's pharmacology, biochemistry, etc., etc. So for instance, for block 1, you're going to do some biochemistry, right? And so I can go to the biochemistry tab, and they've got subcategories. And even within those subcategories, there's videos. So the videos that I need to know for molecular biochemistry are DNA structure, purine metabolism, and pyrimidine metabolism. So what I will say about Boards and Beyond is it is high yield, and by that I mean it focuses on the most important concepts. There are sometimes questions you'll get asked on your NBME exams or on STEP that might not be covered in Boards and Beyond. It is meant to give you a quick rundown on topics, so just keep that in mind. So let me show you what a Boards and Beyond video looks like. So I'll click on DNA structure, for instance, and Dr. Ryan will introduce himself.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our module on
Great. And he just walks through a video, he draws
DNA
on slides, and kind of breaks down concepts. Sometimes Boards and Beyond videos are helpful, sometimes they're not as helpful, but they're worth a shot sometimes. When you're done watching a video, you can take a quiz by clicking this. The questions are pretty challenging, and in your first year, don't be upset if you don't know the answer to these questions. They're really challenging, and oftentimes they require content from other modules that you may not have even covered. So I would take them so you can start thinking about things, but don't take them and get upset if you don't know all the answers to them right away. Additionally, on a Boards and Beyond video, you'll see there's a PDF button at the top, and this allows you to download a copy of the slides so you can take notes while you're following along with the video. Another quick note is you can see that there is a tab at the bottom of the Boards and Beyond video that has First Aid. And what this will do is it'll show you what pages in your textbook correspond to which video. And that's a helpful thing because it'll segue to our next topic, which is First Aid and how to use that. So just like Boards and Beyond is a conglomeration of videos that has very high yield topics for medical students, First Aid is very similar. The only difference is that it's written. So it's just a textbook that's meant to help you study for step 1. It is absolutely essential as a medical student to own this book. You don't have to read it and every day of your life and study it back to front, but it's just useful to have for reference. They've got great figures and whatnot too. And they have different sub-contents broken down just like Boards and Beyond, so you can see they've got biochemistry, immunology, pathology, pharmacology, so it's very similar to how Boards and Beyond is structured. It's just in a book form, and it's nice to have a couple different resources to look at, especially if you like First Aid or maybe you don't like Boards and Beyond. Okay, so now we've broken down what each of these tools look like. I'm going to show you how I approach a week in medical school. Now what I have here is the canvas for block 1. Keep in mind your canvas probably looks different than mine, but the same principle should hold. And we've got our 4 different domains here, and while clinical science, research, and HSSIP are certainly essential to your learning process, I think it's a little bit more intuitive to study for those than it is for basic science, so I'll just cover basic science within the scope of this video. So this is usually what a Canvas page would look like, and let's say you wanted to know how does one survive and use these resources in week 1. Let me show you. So you click on week 1, and what I like to do is I like to read and just see the sort of topics that I'm going to cover. So I can see I'm going to be covering Introduction to Cell Biology and Histology / Logic and Interpretation of Histology. And then in Anatomy, I'm going to do a back dissection. We're going to talk about osteology as well. And then there's some videos that you can reference if you want to for anatomy. There's Dr. Forst's lectures about success in medical school, and then pharmacokinetics, and a few other lectures here. So I usually just kind of skim this. I don't always find it helpful for myself to read the preparatory materials for the lectures. However, I didn't end up attending lecture every single time. If you really enjoy lecture, a lot of these resources are very helpful, and some of my classmates really enjoy them. For the scope of this video, I'm going to show you a workflow outside of these because it's relatively easy to find these because they're always next to the classes they correspond to. Okay, so you might think to yourself, okay, there's lots of topics in this week on Canvas. That looks like a lot. How do I know where to look in Boards and Beyond? How do I know where in First Aid to look? Well, there's actually a very helpful guide that has been created to tell you how to navigate this. Okay, so within the beginning of medical school, you get an email from the faculty that gives you this map. It's probably going to feel overwhelming, but take a deep breath. I'll show you how to navigate it. So you'll see a few different tabs on this Excel sheet at the bottom, and what you're going to want to do is click Block 1. And your version might be a little different than mine, but essentially what it does is it has the entire list of videos for Block 1, and that's kind of hard to look at, but if you scroll down, you can see Week 1 topics, Week 2 topics, Week 3 topics, etc., and etc. And so, I like to take a look at this at the beginning of a block and just sort of plan my approach and whatnot. You've got 8 weeks and figure it out from there. So you can see that the videos that the faculty have selected correspond to the Canvas. And so while it's good to go here and click on their resources if you think you want to read the class materials, you don't have to go through that to a T. You can just look straight here at this Excel sheet. So for instance, DNA replication and DNA structure are some videos we could watch. So let's do DNA structure because we already had that pulled up. And so I would go to my Boards and Beyond video. So you would go to Boards and Beyond and you would search DNA structure. All right, and then you can click the video.
Structure.
And I would pause it. And then what I would do at this point is I would scroll down, go to First Aid. I would see the pages, so 32 and 33. And I think it's good to be primed for the content that I'm about to review. So what I would do is I'd go open my First Aid. In this instance, I have it as a digital format. I would go to those pages, so I'd go to 32 and 33, and I'd read, and I would just think about what I'm about to be exposed to. In Boards and Beyond, maybe take some notes, read through, just skim so I have a very preliminary knowledge. Then I go back to my Boards and Beyond video, and I watch it. You can watch it in 1x speed, you can watch it in 1.5. I've seen people even watch it in 3 times speed. That's a little fast for me. I think 1.5 is a good
In this module, we'll review some basic content.
And go through, and then while you're watching the video, if you have something that sticks out to you, take some notes and write up on here. And then once you get done with the video, what I like to do is I like to then review those Anki cards. Now, some people like to focus on doing Anki all at once rather than stopping after they watch a video. However, I like to do Anki after each video because it helps me sort of encode and commit to memory what I just learned. Okay, so now that we've finished our Boards and Beyond video, we can go turn on the Anki cards to start studying. So let's go to Anki. All right, and you can see we have no cards turned on. We'll go to Browse, and we'll scroll down to where it says Tags. And you can see there's one thing that says hashtag AK, which stands for Anking _ step 1, and that is the important tag that we want to start searching under. You'll then see something called B&B. This stands for Boards and Beyond. You'll click the down arrow there. Now you can see all of the subcategories for Boards and Beyond. So just like I can look at the categories within my web page, someone has done all the heavy lifting and gone ahead and tagged every card for you for these different videos. So I'll go into biochemistry, I'll go under molecular, and I'll click DNA structure. Notice how I can't click any other window to turn on more videos. It's just this is the most specific video. And you can see at the top of my screen it'll say 1 of 54 cards selected. So that means there's 54 DNA cards to learn. So what I'll do is I'll click over here where it has the cards listed. I'll hit Control A, kind of like we did before when we turned all the cards off, and Control J. This will enable or turn on those cards. Then I'll go through the process of learning these cards for the video that I just watched and the first aid pages I just read. I'll click on King, I'll hit enter or space, and I'll start studying. So you can see here, hydralazine can rarely cause blank, which may manifest as myalgias, arthralgias, and joint swelling. Drug-induced lupus. Now, what I'll say is you will see some cards that are a little bit out of your league. You can keep these cards on for now if you want to, or you can turn them off. You know, you don't really need to know about hydralazine right now as an M1 in Block 1. It's up to you as to whether or not you want to turn off the cards that aren't pertinent. But if you know a card is a little ahead, like you're going to cover hydralazine in a future block, and the way you can know that is if you go back to the learning objectives in Canvas and you see nothing about hydralazine in any of the lectures, then you can go ahead and turn off this card. And the way you do that is you hit more at the bottom right, and you can hit suspend note, and then you don't have to worry about that card again. But let's wait until we get to a card that we need to know. So phenytoin is a pretty common drug to know. I would go ahead and learn it, and so I would hit enter when I wanted to guess that card, and phenytoin is the answer. And if I knew that, I'd hit 3 for good and go on and keep answering these. And you know, the Anki app itself tracks how fast you go. So it says that I've been studying for 59 seconds today, and I've taken around 14 seconds per card. I would try to keep it under 20 seconds a card, I think is good. You don't want to be taking forever to your Anki, but you certainly don't want to be blazing through it and not learning anything. Now we'll take a quick break, and I'll show you what it looks like when you've completed all of the cards. Okay, so you can see that I have finished this deck for now. And so, yeah, I have quote-unquote learned a topic now. So what people usually do is they'll use this little Excel sheet as a tracker. And when they complete a topic, they'll just, highlight it, bold it, or whatever. So let's say I want to say this is done. I could, go in here and could cross it out. I could bold it. I could italicize it. I could make it green because I completed it, whatever. One of our classmates made a separate guide that basically took this information and broke it down a little different visually in Excel. And, some people use that. You can make your own. I'm happy to provide some of those resources in the link down below, assuming we can get our hands on them. But yeah, and then you move on to the next topic. So then I would go over to DNA replication, and I would search for that within my Boards and Beyond. So DNA replication. I would click the video, pause it, go to the page in first aid. So in this instance, it's 36. Go to my first aid, read page 36. Watch the video. And then once I'm done with the video, I could say, okay, this video is listed under cell biology, molecular biology, DNA replication. I'd go to my Anki. I would hit browse. I would scroll down to my tags. I would go down to cell bio, molecular, DNA replication. I'd click over here. Now you can see some of the cards that I covered in DNA structure were already included in DNA replication. So there's some overlap. I'd hit Control A, Control J to turn on all those cards, and then I could once again go through and study these ones. And then you just repeat. When you feel like you're ready to start quizzing yourself and testing your knowledge, I would start doing practice questions. There's a couple different places you can find these that I like, but feel free to use outside resources and experiment. Under each Boards and Beyond video, you'll see a question mark and a check. If you click that, you can take a video quiz. As I mentioned previously, these quizzes are quite challenging, so don't beat yourself up if you don't know all the answers to these. Another great place that I like to find questions is something called MedBullets. Now, this might be subject to change, but for now, MedBullets is actually free for their premium, at least for 90 days, and so you can just keep making a new account. It's a really useful website, and it's got topics that you can look and study too. So let's say I wanted to study biochemistry, I could click high yield topics, and I can go in here and study a couple different sub things. So let's say I wanted to test myself on DNA replication, which we talked about. You can click the question, and you can start doing some quiz questions, and then if you want to understand what you're missing, you can just go back to bullets and you could read some high yield things. I like this website as well too. I think it's great for practice questions. Another resource sometimes people use is you can look at BRS textbooks. They're a textbook that has a topic and then questions about that topic, similar to Med Bullets. Explore, tinker, feel free to look at a couple different places. I will say some of the most challenging questions you can do are the AMBOSS questions, which I'm not going to cover AMBOSS in the scope of this video, but just know that it's a tool that you might experiment with and understand that it by far has some of the most hard practice questions on it. But yeah, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to an M2 or other people at the school. We all want you to succeed and do well. Just remember that you're meant to be here. You are a competent human being, and don't be afraid to ask for help, and you will be a doctor. Congratulations on making it this far, and you got this. Thank you guys for watching.